All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're looking at two powerful opposing forces inside all of us: our capacity for some pretty brutal conflict and our incredible ability to build peace. We're going to get into the psychology of what makes us fight, and maybe more importantly, what makes us come together. And really, it all comes down to this one huge question: how do total strangers become bitter enemies? And is there a way to reverse it? Can we turn those enemies back into friends? Well, the answer, believe it or not, comes from a summer camp. So picture this. The year is 1954. We're deep in the woods of Oklahoma, at a place called Robbers Cave State Park. A bus pulls up, and a bunch of boys hop off, thinking they're about to have a totally normal summer at camp. But this was not your average summer camp, not by a long shot. It was actually the stage for one of the most eye-opening experiments in the history of social psychology. Here's how they set it up. You've got two groups, 11 boys each, all about 12 years old, all from pretty similar backgrounds. They showed up on different days, so at first neither group even knew the other existed. They spent their time bonding, swimming, playing games, and they got super tight. One group started calling themselves the Rattlers, and the other became the Eagles. That peace and quiet? Yeah, it didn't last. The moment the Rattlers found out about the Eagles, you could just feel the tension. Suddenly, it wasn't just a baseball diamond, it was their baseball diamond, and the Eagles felt the exact same way. And this is where it gets really interesting. The friendly camp counselors, they weren't just counselors. They were actually researchers, led by a social psychologist named Muzafer Sharif. This whole camp, it was one big, carefully planned experiment. Now, to really kick things into gear, Sharif set up a bunch of competitions. Think tug of war, baseball games, you name it, with cool prizes for the winners. And the effect was instantaneous. It started with some trash talk, which became name-calling, which then blew up into fistfights, stealing stuff, and even raiding each other's cabins. In just a few days, these kids went from strangers to enemies. So, with the camp basically on the verge of all-out war, let's hit pause for a second and actually unpack the psychology of what was going on. What even is aggression? In psychology, the key word for aggression is intended. It's any behavior that's meant to cause harm. It can be physical, it can be verbal, and it often comes from a place of anger, fear, or just wanting to be on top. So where does all this aggression come from? Well, it's complicated. It's a mix of things. You've got biology, for sure, your genes, parts of your brain like the limbic system, hormones like testosterone. But just as important are your mindset and the environment you're in. A really big piece of the puzzle is something called the frustration-aggression hypothesis. It's a simple but super powerful idea. When you're stopped from getting something you want, you're more likely to get aggressive. A classic study looked at baseball pitchers. You know when they were most likely to hit a batter with a pitch? Right after giving up a home run. That's frustration boiling over into aggression, right there. But thankfully, we're not just aggressive animals. We've got this other, equally powerful side to us. So let's flip the coin and talk about the science of helping. The word for this is altruism. It's that selfless concern for other people's well-being. It can be as simple as helping someone with a flat tire, or, in the most extreme cases, running into a burning building to save a stranger. It's the psychological engine for peace. But that leads to a pretty obvious question, right? If helping is so great, why isn't everyone doing it all the time? What holds us back? Well, another famous experiment gives us a pretty big clue. So check this out. In the smoke-filled room experiment, researchers had smoke pour into a room to see who would report it. When someone was in there alone, 75% of them went and got help. But if you put them in the room with two other people, that number dropped to 38%. And get this, if the other two people were actors told to ignore the smoke, only 10% of people said anything. 10%! This is a classic example of the bystander effect. Having other people around can short-circuit the 3 mental steps you need to take before you help someone. First, you have to actually notice something is happening. Second, you have to decide it's a real emergency. And third, you have to personally assume responsibility to do something. When a crowd is around, we just figure, someone else will handle it. Okay, so we've seen how easy it is for us to get aggressive and how surprisingly hard it can be to help. Let's head back to Robbers Cave. How on earth did the researchers pull these warring kids back from the brink? They didn't give them a lecture or make them apologize. No, they did something far more clever. They started creating problems, what they called superordinate goals. that were impossible for just one group to solve. To fix it, they had to work together. For instance, the truck that was supposed to bring them all their food just happened to break down. The only way to get it moving was for all 22 boys, rattlers and eagles, to push it together. Another time, they had to work together to clear a fallen tree, or pool their gear when they were given incomplete sets of camping equipment. And the result was, honestly, it was like magic. The boys who were just days earlier raiding each other's bunks were now sharing their canteens and hanging out. The takeaway was crystal clear. Competition had made them enemies, but cooperation and shared goals turned those very same enemies into friends. And this is really the whole point. It wasn't about the boys themselves being good or bad. They were the same kids the whole time. What changed was the situation. When the situation was set up for competition, they became rivals. When it was set up for cooperation, they became allies. And that leaves us with a pretty massive question to think about. If our situation has that much power to shape whether we act with aggression or with altruism, then what kind of situations should we be trying to build? In our own communities, in our countries, and around the world? How can we create more of those shared goals?